What's one memorable play you remember from your time?
Oh man. You want to remember the good things, but you definitely remember the bad ones, right? Probably one for me, man, was it was Cardell Stewart. We played in Colorado, and we beat them the year before, and so they threw a long pass to the end zone, and I remember because Cardell Stewart was the quarterback. I remember him throwing the ball. I could see the ball, and I don't like that one. That's the bad one. Let me tell you, because they caught the ball over my head. I remember that, man. The dude pushed me, man. He was standing right. Anyway, okay. So the other one I remember was at TCU, and because it was probably last play of the game, second to the last play of the game, and I was a sophomore, and all the other three guys on the field, the DBs were all. It was Mike Welch and Blackman and all. So these were like all conference players, and I was so I knew they were going to throw at me, and I knew they were coming at me. And so they ran a flag route, and when the guy hit the flag, I lost him, and so I just had to whip around quick, and I saw the ball. So I intercepted the ball, and game was over. I spiked the ball. Of course, got a penalty. Wacker was the coach. But anyway, I danced right on TCU's field and went on. So anyway, I remember that play so for sure. Yeah, it was a good one.
Today on Take This Down, I sit down with Dr. Micheal McFarland, Crowley ISD Superintendent. We talk about his growing up in Jasper, Texas, being a hidden strong safety at Baylor University, and how it molded him to the educator and ultimately superintendent of the year. You're going to want to take this down. You're going to want to take this down. Well, Dr. McFarland, thank you again for being willing to join me on Take This Down. It's a privilege and honor to have the opportunity to sit down and visit with you. I know you're a busy man, so I don't take it lightly.
Hey, man, thank you for having me, man. Enjoying being here and looking forward to the conversation.
No, absolutely. It's a tradition of mine to always, tell my guests why I invited them on. When I was starting this idea, I made a list of probably about 30, 40 people who I would love to have the opportunity to sit down in a conversation. You were on that list.
Okay.
I've admired you from afar from what you do professionally, but the first time I ever knew your name was being a fellow Baylor football guy.
That's right.
And known that you couldn't run across the middle when Mike McFarland was coming through.
That's right.
And so just the one to learn more about you and hopefully develop a relationship with you, but also to admire the work that you have done, not only in Crowley ISD, but what you have done in, I'm going to call it what most people call it, Lancaster ISD.
Yeah. That's it, Lancaster.
It's Lancaster ISD.
Depends on where you're from.
Right.
You'll call it differently, but yeah, Lancaster ISD.
Right. So just to kind of get right into it. So who is Dr. Micheal McFarland at his core?
Well, man, at my core, man, I'm just I'm a coach, a team player. I'm a country boy. I grew up in Jasper, Texas. My mom was a teacher, and my dad, I tell everybody, my dad was a superintendent of Sunday school. And if in the Baptist church, that's superintendent of Sunday school, you understand that role. So anyway, just been around a close-knit family that valued education, and I saw the power of education and how it gave me the opportunity to see things and do things and experience things. And so just was attracted to the field. And so I'm an educator at heart. Absolutely.
Gotcha. So, we know the bad history of Jasper, Texas.
Yeah.
But how was Jasper growing up for you in the, not to date you, but growing up and when you were growing up?
Yeah. So I tell you what, man, it was, when I think back to Jasper, man, I have nothing but fond memories. But I realized it was two societies that was happening during that time. Now, I love Jasper. I love it. I want to retire there one day. But growing up in East Texas was unique in that our parents, our community, really built a close knit around us. And so we had a strong, close knit African American community in Jasper. But it was really two societies. There was another community as well. We engaged at school. But outside of school, there was very little engagement. But as a kid, I didn't know any different because I played Little League baseball with the guys I hung out with, after school and I would see others during school and just kind of would engage. It wasn't until after I left Jasper until the incident happened that I really realized that some of the things that I grew up with as normal were not normal. And so I have a different perspective now, but I love Jasper, love the people there.
It sounds like, growing up in Jasper was just like any ordinary childhood.
Yeah.
And, almost like your innocence was protected for what may have been going on around you.
Absolutely. It absolutely was. I mean, there were people, leaders around in our community that created the safe space for us to where we didn't even know about any of the inequities and the discrimination and all that stuff that was actually occurring. That occurs all across Texas, quite frankly, and all across the nation. But our parents and our leaders in our churches and communities, they created this environment to where we could thrive and we recognized that we were as good as anyone else. And so we left with that strong self-concept and self-identity.
Growing up, in the church with your father as the superintendent of Sunday school and your mom as an educator, were your parents, kind of like your guiding star, or was there another person who you looked up to or, was a mentor?
I think it was probably my parents were actually they were my models, quite frankly, but because of the close knit of the community, there was so many adults that we viewed as parents and respected as parents, and so there was many. I had a teacher. She was my typing teacher, and my senior year, and she was really the one that was responsible for me really making a decision to go to Baylor and really deciding education, because I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but what I knew is that I wanted to do something where I would have an impact. And she made me decide. She wouldn't let me leave out of her class. I remember the day she said, "No, you have a scholarship, but you don't know what you're going to do." And so she forced me to really think about how I wanted to spend my life. And I ended up saying, "Hey, I want to do what you're doing." And then she was an educator, and so that kind of led me down that path, Miss Colley, for sure.
Gotcha. And so obviously you went on to Baylor. Going from Jasper, Texas to Waco, Texas, was that a culture shock, or how was that for you?
It wasn't as much of a culture shock because, Waco was pretty, it was pretty mild at the time, but we had a good time and enjoyed that experience. And so it wasn't much of a culture shock. But I realized that I was one of very few. Back then, we had very few African Americans there at the university. There was a small few, but I quickly felt at home, and I quickly connected with our team and with the people there, and love it. And so, still connected to Baylor now. I'm on the board of Regents now at Baylor, and love it and teach there. And so, just a close knit experience. And I think it's because I came from that close-knit community, I recognize the importance of relationships and all that. So that helped me.
Gotcha. And, not from an athletic standpoint, but from a social and education background, did you feel like you were prepared coming from a small East Texas town to taking on the rigors of what college is?
I really don't think I was prepared, to be honest with you. I think I went to Baylor, was able to go to Baylor because I could run fast, throw a football, catch a football and all that. Because had I not had the athletic ability, then I would have been able to go to Baylor. Academically, I just simply wasn't prepared. Now, I had the capacity, but I wasn't prepared. And that's another thing that drove me into education, because I had several of my classmates in high school that were a lot more intelligent than I am, that I was a lot smarter and could take things apart and put them back together with not even thinking about it. But they didn't have the talent that I had athletically, so they didn't get the opportunity. And so what I can do attribute to Baylor is once I got there, I had the supports I needed to have to be able to build my academic capacity and really to be able to do well. I did well academically at Baylor, but I was not prepared academically. And so that was one of the reasons why I got into education, quite frankly, is like, for me, education should be more than about getting a kid a high school diploma. When we were going through school, they told us, hey, do everything you're supposed to do, follow the rules, make good grades, and then you're going to have the world open up to you. In reality, that's not all true. That's not the whole story. Right. And so I think for me, going to Baylor, being in developmental English, being in developmental math, being in these basic study skills classes, and learning like the skills of study, learning how to actually process and memorize and store things, and in working groups, learning all those things. That first year with those developmental classes, the absolute best thing that ever happened to me. And so I think from my vantage point, the public school system, like, we have to do more than just get a kid a high school diploma. Tell people all the time, one of the saddest days of my life when I was a principal was standing on the stage, shaking kids' hand, giving them a high school diploma, and knowing that they weren't ready. And so anyway, that's really a lot of the things that motivate me as a superintendent now.
Gotcha. And, I want to talk a little bit about that. Did you feel that, because of the community, ties and the community support, that you felt pressure that you had to succeed when you went off to Baylor?
I don't know that I felt the pressure. I definitely felt the responsibility and the obligation because my dad was a barber. And
my dad's a barber.
Oh, really? we share a whole lot in common. We keep talking. We may be related.
Right. Who your people?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, but yeah, I remember, man, my dad was a barber, and he's one of the few black businessmen in the community. Because, in our community, the barber is like, that's a central place. Right. And everybody in a small community, everybody go to the barbershop for a haircut and everything else. And so I can remember from the time I was probably first, second grade, I would get dropped off at my dad's barbershop, and I would be in the barbershop, and you would hear men come in and talking and just discussing. And I remember a picture on the wall of James Hadnot. He was an athlete that was at Texas Tech at the time. One of the first person that I can remember that went to college from the area. I'm sure others had, but as a young kid, I saw this picture every day of this football player who was in college, and I saw there was 4 other guys that I knew that attended college and that I knew that I grew up with, and so I recognized that athletics was a way of me being able to get to college as well, and so yeah, it was a great experience for me, man, and I don't know what your question was, but I can tell you, you took me back to the barbershop, and that really was impactful for me, quite frankly.
I would say was funny. I'm not being interviewed, but my dad was also a pastor, but going into the barbershop as a little kid and just sitting there for 6, 7, you kind of learn a lot about life. Because as you know, in the black barbershop, you talk about everything under the sun, some good, some things you don't need to be here.
That's right.
But it becomes like a school, if you will. And
Absolutely.
So it's interesting you hear saying it as well.
Yeah.
So after Baylor, if my research is right, you go out to Tyler ISD.
Right.
How was that for you?
Man, it was really an awesome experience. Before I actually went up to New York, and my plan was actually to go back to Baylor and be an grad assistant. And but I ended up getting cut from the Giants after school had started, and so I couldn't go back to Baylor because they'd already started. And so my coach knew a head coach in Tyler, at John Tyler. And I was algebra teacher and football coach. And so I called him and went back and there in Tyler and loved it, absolutely loved it. But I had an experience that second year of coaching and teaching. I loved athletics. I love sports because it gave me an opportunity to see all these other things. But it wasn't all I was about. And so what I remember is that we would go through the football season, and we'd have these kids from the time they were 9th graders, 10th graders, 11th graders during the summer, all throughout the year, all through the football season. Now they're seniors, the season's over with, and we had to change their schedules. And I was the get back coach. And so what that meant is our field house was a ways away from the school. And so when seniors are done, their senior year, they got to find another class to go through. They can't keep coming to athletics because you got to make space for the other kids. So my responsibility was to stand halfway and shoo the kids away to go somewhere else. And so as I was doing that, I was like, man, it's got to be more than this. Like we've been working with these kids for 3 years, 4 years, but now the season's over with and we're done with them. And so then I would see these same students in the mall during the summer, and it would go the same way. It would say, "Hey, coach, how's it going?" Da da da. And then the next thing they would say is, "Well, coach, I'm getting ready." Or they would say, "I'm fixing to go to college next semester. I'm getting ready." It was always they were getting ready to do something. We would shake our hands, dap each other up, and go our separate ways. And in my mind, I knew this kid is not going to go. He's not going to do anything else if he doesn't have the support and assistance and all that. So that drove me out of coaching into trying to figure out how can we provide more choices and opportunities for students after they graduate, because athletics gives them a window, but it doesn't give them a full access. And so anyway, all those experiences in Tyler really led me to become an administrator and then eventually superintendent.
If I can just stop a little bit and talk a little bit about John Tyler, because this is where, we may really have to go back and sit down. We may be related because I grew up wanting to play for the pride of Cujo.
Cujo Lions, all right.
The
okay.
Cujo Lions.
All right.
And if my timeline is right, you were probably coaching or a part of and know a lot about the greatest high school football game I ever played.
Man.
I remember being in Texas Stadium as a kid in that game because my dad's side of the family all went to Plano East.
Okay.
And my mom, my grandma lived on Leon Street right there in front of John Tyler.
Absolutely.
And so
I
still have relatives to this day that live as far as Texas City. When John Tyler's been in the playoffs, they'll drive and go. And so John Tyler, hold a very dear place. I didn't get to go to John Tyler, but I went to Rice Elementary before moving back. But and so you move into education. Move into administration, the principal. Right. With this new lens, if you will. Do you feel like the training that you had, you were ready at that time?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the thing is, I've always been a part of a team, always been a part of a group. And so I really found it valuable to be connected to people who are trying to do things, who are trying to achieve something, right? So being a part of a team is just natural. Also, I was a problem solver. And I think being a principal, you have to have those skills. You got to want to solve problems. You got to want to work together with a team, but you also have to have this desire to prove a case or to prove folks wrong. And that was me. I was always attracted to situations where things were not as they should be, and I wanted to make them better, right? And so I think as a principal, I saw that as an opportunity to do that, to put systems, programs, and practices in place with the right people to make things better for children long term. And so I think that was a natural position for me, because as an athlete, as a coach, just being a part of the team, that's what I got energy from that, and getting people to do more than they thought were possible.
And so then you move into a superintendent role, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. How was that experience?
Man, it was a great experience because I left Tyler as the principal. So I started off teaching at John Tyler and actually eventually became the principal at John Tyler. So then I left John Tyler and went up to Illinois, Champaign, Illinois, and became an assistant superintendent. And that was a great experience because I had opportunity to follow a mentor. And one of the key challenges in that district in Champaign, Illinois, was the African-American community sued the school district because of the outcomes that were being experienced by African-American children and others in that area. And so it was a great experience because I was on a team that was actually brought in to actually address those challenges. But the challenging part is that we would every quarter be basically going to court. There would be 3 judges, 3 officers, the court, it was a consent decree. So you had 3 officers of the court, and you had the community, which were people that look like me and you, or my aunts and they were suing the district. And so we were on the other side. And so we were having to every quarter justify everything that we were doing and the impact it was having on those kids that had been underperforming. So it was a great experience. It was a challenging experience, and I learned so much. And so my role at that point was to work with the community, to bring the community together, work with the high schools, and to get them together, and to really make sure that the system was responsive to the needs of the children that was in the system that day, at that time. And so it was a great experience. And so.
Let me ask you this question. So you go in, there's a consent decree for the public education system. Yeah. And, did you feel that the community receive you well, or did they think like, oh, this is just a token from Texas to appease us?
Yeah, they called us the Texas Mafia. But the thing is, what you realize is that regardless of what people are, really, there's way more in common. People have way more in common than difference, And so what we did was, we were intentional. I was intentional connecting with them and let them know, hey, I want the same thing you all want. Like, we weren't a part of creating the problem, but we're going to be a part of solving it. And so even though the problem is there, and we're on the other side, now we're on the side to try to solve the problem. And we had the support of the court to help us to do the things that systematically were not done in the past. And so we had to convince the community that we were actually authentic and genuine in what we were attempting to do. And we had to provide evidence. They held us accountable. It was a true challenge, and was costing the district like $2 million a year over a period of time. But we gained their respect because they saw the improvements, and then they eventually began to trust us. But they were still, always saying, "Well, when y'all gone, what's going to happen?" And so it was a challenging experience. But something I learned immensely because I also had to deal with the unions, and so we didn't have unions in Texas, so I had to deal with it. And it was really all about how do you build relationships and make connections with people that you may have different opinions, and been able to work with folks. And so it was a great experience, man. And it prepared me to come back to Lancaster as superintendent, which was my first superintendency. And that was a challenge.
Yeah, and I think it's a natural segue. Yeah. Like you leave one challenge, then one could say that you kind of take on a bigger challenge in Lancaster, from what that community and what that school district was currently at. And then also now, although assistant superintendent, now you're the head honcho, you're calling everything. Yeah. How was that?
Man, I tell you, for me, as I think about it, even just as I'm talking about each one of the situations, I'm thinking about, like, why would I take it? And I'm just attracted to those situations where maybe the organization is underperforming, but they could be doing better. And I felt like I could pull people together to rally them and get them to achieve more. And so going into Lancaster, it was a significant challenge. And but what I realized is that the same skills that I had to use to connect with the community and to connect with the unions and all that were the same skills that I would need to use in order to pull the people together. Because what I believe is that most people genuinely care and want what's best. The question is getting them to see kind of how collectively working together we could actually have a positive result. And it really takes me all the way back to Jasper. And so the original question was, you asked me about my feeling about Jasper. And one thing that was so, I guess, informative or instructive to me in Jasper was how the church, the school, the community, they were able to, and the local elected officials, they were able to work together to create this safe space for me and for Mike in that situation. They were able to do that. And so in my mind, if we could create that same kind of a synergy within a community where you got politicians and city councilmen and clergy and educators working together, then we can create the ideal community. That's what happened in Lancaster after 7 years. And that's what we're attempting to do here in Crowley, quite frankly, is how do we make sure that all these entities work together for the common good, regardless of race, ethnicity, political power, all of that. It can happen, but it takes a person and people with the understanding of how important it is. Because if we don't work together like that, the thing is, like when the elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers. And so if we don't get it right, then students in our schools don't have the choices and opportunities that I had. And I had it because of my athletic ability. But I had other friends that could have done more and were not able to.
Yeah, you talk about, the challenges that you have, but then moving to Crowley. If I'm not mistaken, is it 100% of the schools? What's you speak a little bit about that, some of the achievements.
Yeah, so we're excited about that. When we arrived in Crowley, we had 26 schools, and 4 had been historically underperforming, and we had several others that were average at best. And so recently, we have all of our schools, 100% of our schools are A or B. And all of our elementary schools were either A or B. And then, I said 100% of our schools exceeded standard. All of our elementary schools were A and B. Our high schools were Bs. And our middle schools now, which is where we're starting right now, is really looking at how we innovate at the middle school level. Our middle schools were exceeded standards, but they're right on the cusp of being a B. And so we're working with our middle schools now. But the thing that's important is that about 85% of our district is what we would consider school dependent. And most people call it economically disadvantaged. I think terms matter. And I think that is a term that's a deficit term. And what I simply say to our folks in the district is they're school dependent, which means they're depending on you more so than most. So it makes our job and our role even more critical. The other thing is that's important that people don't realize is that when people think of Fort Worth, they think of Fort Worth ISD. But actually 90% of our schools are actually in the city limits of Fort Worth. And so what was really also a challenge for me is coming to Crowley. When you say Crowley, you think of Crowley, this small, rural town. Right. And it's really, we really had to, and it's 55 square miles our district is. So we really had to focus on first creating this identity and building this connection between the churches, the schools, the politicians, all the elected officials. And so we really spent a whole lot of time in really creating this Crowley village and then make sure everybody understands it's all of our responsibility. once we were able to do that and able to, hire the right principals and get the right people in place, then the results begin to perform. And so really what it tells me that kids have the capacity, students have the capacity to achieve, but the adults are the ones that we have to get together. And that's what we've been doing in Crowley and intend to continue to do.
One of the things that I've noticed about Crowley, or in particular Crowley ISD, y'all are building houses in complexes like every other day. It seems like I get lost on Chisholm Trail, or I get lost and turn. There's a new development coming up. And how do you, face the challenges of growth, but also maintaining the excellence that you expect from your schools and your educators?
Yeah, I mean, man, that is the challenge right now for us. As you know, as you mentioned, man, the growth is significant. We're the fastest growing area in Southwest Tarrant County for sure, and we think that, well, actually in Tarrant County, when you really look at the numbers, and so. What we realized really 3 years ago, we realized that was a challenge for us, that there would be a challenge. We'll be at about 25,000 within about 3 years. Wow. And so we actually, a year ago, passed a bond, a $1.4 billion bond to help us to build additional schools, purchase property and all that. And so our goal, what's important for us is that we stay ahead of it. And so we are really working hard to stay ahead from a facility standpoint, but also to make sure that the folks in the district recognize that our demographics are changing, that we are no longer this rural, small community, but that we are more of an urban, suburban area, and that we have to understand that we got challenges that come along with it that we have to be prepared to address, and we have to have leaders who are comfortable addressing those challenges. When we look at our demographics, our fastest growing population is actually African American, and really right now we're about 50% African American, about 33% Hispanic, and then a percentage Asian and white, and so that number is continuing to increase. So we have to make sure that we have educators that are passionate about addressing challenges, issues, and opportunities with that group.
Being in education for, if I say roughly 30 years now, are the challenges the same as they were in the 90s as they are now, or are there new challenges?
I think the challenges are they're the same kind of challenges. There are new nuances connected to those challenges. Finances, are a challenge right now for us just because of the context we're in. One of the things that's different now compared to when we started. When we started, everyone was pretty much supportive of public schools. And you could pretty much rely on rallying the community around the public school. Now there are options, there are choices, and so there are other things out there. And so now that creates a situation where from a district standpoint, we have to be more intentional about promoting and really highlighting and really being really intentional about recruiting students and attracting people. Like, folks are just not going. All these houses you mentioned, they're just not going to attend our schools because because they're moving out of that area. We have to make sure that we are innovating, we're creative, and that we're on the cutting edge. And so even right now, during this budget uncertainty that we are experiencing, what I told my people yesterday, actually, and we were discussing like the reductions that we have to make, and we have to make some reductions. But what I said was, now is the time for us to invest more. Not to cut, but to invest in recruiting and invest in making sure that we're innovative and that we're different and that we're unique. And so it's kind of counterintuitive, but a lot of times in a crisis, people stop investing. When in actuality, when you have a crisis, that's when you invest more, right, so that we can capture market share when the things change. And so it's a concept that's kind of hard sometimes for people to understand, especially when we're talking about making political decisions and financial decisions, and we're investing in recruiting and promoting and all, and we're also reducing here. And so I'm just trying to make the case that the things that we do now will impact the sustainability of the organization 5, 6, 7 years from now.
And you talk about innovation. Talk a little bit about the partnership that you all have with Texas Southern University. Yeah,
so man, it's been a great partnership, and man, we're about to I think ink another really, really significant partnership. But what we want to do, and what I talked earlier about making sure that kids leave us with more than a high school diploma. They got to leave us with choices and opportunities. Well, here's the reality: the challenge for most students who graduate high school is not only them being academically prepared, but it's also them being able to follow through on all of the administrative requirements in order to get into college, whether it's filling out the FAFSA, or whether it's securing all the paperwork and doing all those things. And so what we want to do is make sure that we have strong relationships with Texas Southern, to where our students understand and know that they can be at a college or university and really perform. And so we've really built a strong partnership where they can just see themselves there. So we have scholarship opportunities and opportunities for kids to go and visit the campus and actually participate in summer programs on their campus. And they're able to come to our campus as well and offer programs. And we have the same with Texas Wesleyan. And we have partnership with Texas Wesleyan, and now they're using our athletic stadium. And now our kids are able to go over to their university at a reduced rate, and just really trying to figure out how we just demystify that connection. We are excited about the possibility of connecting with Paul Quinn and really some of the other universities around Texas, Tarleton. Excuse me, that we're really excited about what's about to happen with Tarleton, because Tarleton's in our district. Right. And so just the idea is to really demystify that process of higher ed. We think it's just natural and normal. But oftentimes children don't have actual tangible models of kids who've been in college, or even people who've gone through the process. And so
it's almost like one of those exposures. You don't know you can do something if you've never seen it be done.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so, I think if I saw one time you gave a talk about, and I may be butchering the title of your presentation, but something along the lines of, the education, and promoting the workforce or something along those lines.
Yes.
How do you feel about, or what are your thoughts on preparing students, whether it starts at middle school or high school, preparing them to be the next, workforce that we have?
I think it's critical, and I think it's important, and it goes back to like the partnerships. Here's the reality. I'm an educator, and I spent 30 years of my career in a school building, or learning about school, or learning about, what happens and how to prepare kids academically. But I haven't been an attorney, or I haven't been an engineer. I haven't been a doctor or a lawyer or other things. And so it's so important to have those connections. And so as we're preparing students to be strong academically, we also got to make those connections and prepare them for the workforce. Here's the reality. What I know is that it's no longer a automatic requirement for every student to get a 4-year degree or go to a 4-year university right out of high school. There are other options. And so we've worked with Bombardier and other agencies, other organizations, and we've talked about how can we get students some of this job entry training while they're in high school, so that they can actually get a job when they get out of high school. Maybe they're working on a certification. Maybe they were able to get the preparation, the education preparation to get the entry-level job. How can we do that, and how can we make that work? And so what we've done, we have several partners with our Career and Technology Center. We have several partners to where we have invited them in, and we said, hey, anytime you hire new people, you take them through this educational training period. Bring that training period on our campus. Let's go ahead and take our kids through that training period, so that when you start to hire, you have a group of folks already through that process. And so it's been beneficial. We actually, in Tyler, I know you probably remember Train, and there were several other, I know Carrier. Yeah. So we, as a high school principal, that's one thing we did. We created partnerships with them. And so they were at that point in time trying to recruit more Hispanic and African-American young men right out of high school. And so we created that partnership, and we had 15 to 20 kids end up getting a job for the summer, making $20, $30 an hour. And then they end up actually also paying for them to go to college. And so the same thing, we're working with the health center there in our area, and doing some very similar things with CVS and Walgreens. We have pharmacy tech students who are now working as pharmacists in those areas. So our role as a school district is not only to prepare them academically, but to connect them with workforce folks to make sure that students know, hey, you can go right into this position if you choose not to go to college.
Just in our brief conversation, I could see why you won Superintendent of the Year for the state of Texas. But talk about that. Was that kind of like, an honor to be recognized for the work that you've done, or was it more so like I still got more work to do?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely an honor to honor for the work, for sure. I mean, I was, because we did some good work, and so I think it was something that of course, you don't get the award by yourself, but collectively it was an honor. I mean, I was proud of that because it said that we collectively as an organization had made an impact. However, it also, you know how it is. It's like when you win a championship, you want to win another one, right? One. And so it was motivation for me, it was motivation to say, okay, the work is worth the effort. Not only is it the students are benefiting, but there's an impact. And so it created a platform. So now people wanted to hear what it is you were doing. And so from my vantage point, I can't be here talking about all this and it's not actually happening. And so it was also more of, okay, now it's really gotta step it up. And so, my focus now is, of course, our board won Board of the Year in Crowley. And so what I realized is in winning the Superintendent of the Year in Lancaster, that was a good personal accomplishment. But what was a bigger accomplishment was to take a board that was a 4-3 board that was split, and split on hiring me. I mean, and they tell you never take a 4-3 vote, right? But I took the vote because I felt like I wanted to be back in Texas 1, but I also felt like I could pull them together. But to take that board that was dysfunctional at the time, and for that board to be able to win the Board of the Year, that was an honor. And then to come here in Crowley and to do that again, that just, for me, it just affirmed the approach of getting people to work together and then hiring good people. And it really affirmed the fact that it's the adults. It's the adults that matters.
As you continue to move forward in your career and achieve things, do you still see yourself as that boy from Jasper, Texas, or the young man from Jasper, Texas? No,
yeah, absolutely. I do. My grandma, my nickname was Country Boy, and that's what I still see myself as, and that's what I'm most comfortable as, quite frankly. Like I said earlier, like I just want to be a part of the team. I just want to be, it's just, I've had opportunity to lead, but I want to be a part of the team. And I have a couple of my teammates tell me all the time, you're the superintendent, right? You can't just be a part of the team. But I do just see myself as a part of the team and believe that I have this desire to add value to people. And what happens is when you add value to people, then they give you influence. And so I still want to always put myself in a position to continue to add value to people, and good things happen.
So when you see yourself, let's say another 30 years in education, and we're at the Dr. Micheal McFarland retirement party, how do you want people to remember you as?
I think I want to be remembered as a person that made people believe and that helped them to see that more was possible and that they could achieve more. Like I want to make sure, for me, I just wanted people to understand, man, you got what it takes inside of you to do great work and to do whatever you want to do. Like we come from a powerful people who are creative, and we all have that seed in us, that we all can be leaders because we all can serve and we all can make it better. I would like my legacy to be that he developed people.
Gotcha. Well, that's powerful. That's powerful.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you again for sitting down and having this conversation. It has truly been everything I thought it was going to be and more. And, whatever I can do as far as to help you in your capacity, but also the students in Crowley ISD, please let me know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Appreciate you, man.
Absolutely.
All right. Sick 'em bears.